All right, so it's part 2 of lesson 5. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a new project for today. And as I said, this project, we're going to work with it the rest of the semester. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new project. I'm going to pick empty activity. And I'm going to call it Restorator. So what we'll do is we're going to add some of our favorite restaurants from around town and we'll give them 5-star rating. And then we'll have a list of what's here. Okay, so I'll leave the other options, default language Kotlin, API minimum SDK API 23, and I'll click finish. You don't have to call yours Restorator, you can call it whatever you like. In the past I've built a music library, but I think we'll do something different this time. Edwin, did the update fail? I guess, Edwin, you could maybe check in your task manager if it is running at all and kill the process from there and try to restart. I wonder if there's a process that didn't quite complete. Maybe try that. Okay, so I've got a new project here. So the very first thing we're going to do is I'm going to connect it to Firebase. Now, I've already logged in to my Google account. Okay, sure, no problem, Edwin. I am going to keep going, but I am recording. So if you click on Tools, in your Tools menu, third option from the bottom should be Firebase. So click on Firebase. Now at some point here, you're going to get prompted to log into a Google account. You can use any Google account for this. I'm already signed in. So I think, yeah, if you go to the I have a little toolbar here on the very right under the X, got a little user profile icon, and it shows my Google account. If you're not signed in yet, it's okay. You'll get prompted to sign in a minute. So I'm going to expand Firestore. And then I get this option, read and write documents with Cloud Firestore. So I'm going to click on that. And then the assistant first prompts me to connect to Firebase. So I think here, when you click it, is where it may prompt you to sign into your Google account. You can let me know in the chat. So it's going to take me to the Firebase console. I prefer to work with the console in Chrome. So I'm actually just going to copy that URL. Because I use a different Google account in Firefox. So it says to connect your app, choose an existing project or create a new one. So I'm going to click on add a project. And it already grabs the name of our Android app. and defaults. So our Firebase project by default will have the same name as our Android app. I'll click continue. Again, if you get stuck or you need me to go back or review something again, just let me know, please. So I'll click continue. It asks if I want analytics. I can, by default, it's enabled. It does show, we're probably not going to use a lot of these things, so it's up to you if you want analytics enabled or not. I'll leave it on for now, and I'll click continue. So I'll just accept the terms. It defaults to the United States. That's fine. You can change it to Canada if you want. And then I'll create my project. So again, we're not creating the database specifically yet. We're just creating the Firebase project, which could be using any one of the Firebase services. So first we're creating kind of the general. Yeah, it's okay that it's, I think we can, I'm going to click cancel here. Andrew, mine is the same. Well, I'll wait. I'll finish up in the console. So now that my project is ready, I'll click continue. I'll let this go for a minute. So it says our app has been created in Firebase and it's ready to connect in Android Studio. So I'll click connect. And it says we can now use Firebase, go back to Android Studio. So now that window has gone away finally, and it says our app is now connected to my Firebase project. So it does take a little while. So that modal window will stay until the process in the console Okay. Delano, try it again. So now I get this checkbox that says I'm connected. Now I'm going to click this Add Cloud Firestore to your app. So now it's going to add these dependencies. Google services to our project level build.gradle, also to the app build.gradle, as well as the dependency on Firebase Firestore. So I'm just going to click accept changes. So it adds the Google Services plugin to both of my build.gradle files. And now it's added this dependency to Firebase Firestore. So now we need to go to the console . I'm going to go back to the console and we now need to create the Firestore database there. So we're connected to Firebase, but we don't actually have a database yet. So in my browser, I'll go back to the Firebase console. And here's my new project. And it's already set up as an Android project. So I'll click on my project. And then I want to choose Cloud Firestore. I can either choose it from the nav bar on the left over here under Develop, or if I just scroll down in the main panel, there's a big orange icon, big orange graphic here that says Cloud Firestore. So I want to pick that. And then I'm going to click the Create Database button, which brings up this little window. It defaults to start in production mode that says all third-party reads and writes are denied. But I'm going to change that to test mode. So I'm going to toggle that. I'll go through this again. Let me just go right back. So from the main project screen actually I'll go right back to the console. So I'm going to go to my Firebase console. I've put the link in the chat. I'm going to click on my Firebase project. And I'm going to choose Cloud Firestore. I want to create a database. And I want to start in test mode. So all reads and writes will be allowed for 30 days. I'm going to click next. I'll just leave the location. I don't really care what the server location is. And I'll click the enable button. So this is going to provision a new database. Excuse me, inside our Firebase project. So we can add data here if we want to, but we're going to add the data through our Android app instead. If I go back to Android Studio and change my view, if we just look at the project view, we'll now see under my app folder, here's my Google services.json. So the Firebase Wizard, it generates this. This basically contains the path and the ID of my database with an API key. So this is how our app connects to the database. If for some reason that Firebase Assistant doesn't work, we can actually download this file. So if we go to the project settings, under your apps, so it's already connected to my Android app, so I can add the app through the console as well. And I could download this Google Services JSON file if for some reason the Firebase Assistant didn't work. I know Delano was asking you to connect it manually. So you can connect it manually through here if you need to. And then you download this file and it goes in the app folder. So our app should have the connection now. We've set up the database and we have the correct configuration within Android Studio. Yep, so Andre, good question. When you create a project in Firebase, you can specify what app. So let's say I also want it to be available for iOS. So if I add an app, I can pick an iOS app, another Android app, web, or Unity. So it's not Android specific. So you could use Swift and build an iOS app and use this same backend. So now that it's configured, we want to build on our main activity. We want to build an interface to capture data from our users. And then we want to write some code in the Kotlin class that will save that data to Firebase. So I'm going to open up my main activity. I'm going to delete the hello world text view that's here. And I think rather than designing the UI, I've already designed it. I'm just going to, if you want, rather than us going through and putting in all the individual controls, I think everybody's gotten used to that over 4 lessons with dragging and dropping and setting up the constraints. I'm just going to dump them into the chat if you like, and you can copy and paste the UI controls. Okay, we'll have to add a few string resources. But here are the controls. I've put them in the chat. So what we want on the page oh, it got cut off. Sorry. I'm going to do it in 2 pieces. Too long. Here are the first 2. So we're going to add a text view at the top as a heading. Then we're going to have an edit text where the user could enter a name of a restaurant. Underneath, we're going to have 2 more views, which I'm going to put in the chat for you now. And I'll paste these into my activity. We have a spinner, so a drop-down list from 1 to 5 for a rating, and then we have a save button. So I'm going to take all of that code I've put in the chat. I'm just going to go into my XML. And inside my constraint layout, I'm going to add those 4 views. And I've got a few errors here because I'm using a few resources, some string resources for text, as well as a dimension resource. I want my heading, I'm increasing the text size so it's larger. So I'm going to want to go ahead and create those resources. So first, I'm going to create a string value resource, add restaurant. And I'll have the value say, add a new restaurant. So this will be the heading at the top of our main activity. So I'll just add that to strings.xml. I want a dimension resource for the text size. We'll maybe make it something like 24 SP. So I'll hit Alt-Shift-Enter or use my code prompt here. So my resource value here will be 24 SP. So that should take care of the missing resources. Yep, no problem. I will show you the values in the resource files as well. Sure. So you can put whatever string you like in here. So I just put it in this way. So you can always add it manually. So my string value is add a new restaurant. That's the heading that I want to appear at the top of the activity. Yeah, we're not going to get too carried away with styling the spinner. I'm just going to make it a basic spinner for today. You shouldn't have multiple root tags. You're talking about in the activity main. Multiple root tags in which file?
Sorry, just a quick thing. So he just didn't. You have to remove the slash after the main activity in the first XML piece.
Right, yes. Sorry, once you take out that hello world, it self-closed this constraint layout tag. So yes, I had to take that out. And then it adds a closing tag at the end. Yes, you're right. So as soon as I took out the hello world, the constraint layout got this tag here. And there was no closing tag. So you've got to remove that slash. Thank you. Sorry, I kind of skipped. I did it, but I didn't explain it. Thanks, Andrew. So then you need to close the constraint layout at the bottom. And our 4 views, they have to go inside that opening and closing constraint layout tag. So for our spinner, I'm going to create an array from 1 to 5. So inside our strings.xml, I'll put it in the chat, we're going to create a string array called ratings. And I've put the values in the chat. So inside of strings.xml, I'll just paste in my array. So now my array ratings in my spinner, it turns green. There's one more resource we're still missing, which is a simple string save. So I'll just create that. I'll just set the resource value. So this will just be the text that appears on our button. I'll just set it to save. Edwin, did you have any luck with your Android Studio out of curiosity? Okay, great. Yep, the add daemon heading, I'll show that one too, Andrew. So I just created that resource. So that's under values and daemons. I created a daemon name of heading with a value of 24 SP. So that'll turn that resource from red to green once you add this dimension. Got it. Okay, if you don't have it, Andrew, then you can simply create it, or you typically in Android Studio, if you mouse over it, it should give you the option to create it. If you use the Alt-Shift-Enter, it should prompt you. If that file doesn't exist, it should allow you to create it. But you can always create it manually. So it goes under values. The file is daemons.xml. And there's the text that would go inside that file. So once you've got any errors, any layout errors, remove from your activity. Let's run the app just to have a look at it. It doesn't do anything yet, but we can just check our UI. We'll make sure our interface looks okay, and then we can start to write the code to interact with Firebase. So this is my little test app I was building yesterday. This is basically what we want to work through today. So just waiting for Android Studio to finish the build and deploying to the emulator. Once our UI is complete, we've got basically 2 steps we need to actually be able to save to Firestore. Number 1 is we'll need to create a class that will take our inputs, and then we've got to connect to Firestore and then push our class. Which XML, Daniel? Strings or demens? Oh. Yeah, you need to close the constraint layout. Okay, Andrew, I'll come back to that in a minute. So here's what our UI should look like. We have an edit text. We've got a spinner. And we have a save button. And we have our heading that's scaled to 24 SP. So this is the UI as it should be right now. Okay, you're missing the Google services.json. There's a couple things we can do. Number 1 is go over here to this little tab to the assistant. Are these 2 things checked? I have a feeling this second step hasn't been it is. Okay. Okay, that's good. Well, let's download it manually. So in that case, go to Firebase, go to your project and click on Settings and Project Settings. That'll bring you to this screen. And if you scroll down to the second section under Your Apps, it should show your Android app here if it's already connected in Android Studio, which it sounds like it is. So what you want to do is we want to download, just click on the Google-services.json, and you are going to save it into your project folder, into the app folder. So download the file from there. Once you download that file, try and run it again. You may need to try building the project with the build button, the make project button. But if it says you don't have the Google Services JSON, you can always download it from the Firebase console. So now I want to build a simple restaurant class in Kotlin that's got 3 properties. It's got an ID, it has a name, and it has a rating. Okay. And we'll create, we'll actually need two constructors. We need an empty one, and then we need a constructor that takes all three parameters and populates the properties. So in my project, okay, great. Glad that worked. So under my app and Java, I've got my main activity Kotlin class up here. I'm going to right click that folder and create a new Kotlin file /class. So you can see the path, same folder where main activity.kt is, new Kotlin file /class. I'm going to call it restaurant. And rather than it being a file, I want it to be a class. So this is just a business object. There's no UI. It's not an activity. It's just a class object. So I'm going to create it as a class, and I'll call it restaurant, singular with a capital R. So inside my class, we'll create three properties. We'll have an ID. And the IDs in Firebase, much like they're in MongoDB, they're actually strings. They're kind of like globally unique IDs. They're not numeric. We'll have a name variable, which will also be a string. And we'll have a rating variable, which will be an integer. We need two constructors. The first one's just going to be empty so that we can instantiate an instance of our class, even if we don't pass in any property values. The second one will be used for writing. Oops. So in this overload, we're actually passing all three values of the restaurant to our new object that we're instantiating. And then we just fill the properties. There's really nothing too fancy going on here. Right? Similar to what you guys would have done in Java as far back as semester 2 in your Intro to Objects course. Create a class, set up some properties, create a constructor or an overloaded constructor. Okay, you haven't done it before in Kotlin, but basically the same as what you've done in Java. No, we don't. We just call constructor. It's automatically, that is one difference. So syntactically, Edwin, that's a really good question. It's similar. In Java or C#, yes, we use the name of the class in the constructor. In Kotlin, we just call constructor generically. So now what we want to do on our save button in our main activity, when our save button gets clicked, we want to populate the name and rating properties from our edit text and spinner. So we're going to instantiate an instance of the restaurant class. So we need the empty constructor because we don't have an ID yet. When we're creating, we can only populate the name and rating properties. Then we're going to push this to a new Firebase document and we'll retrieve the ID from Firebase and then populate the ID property this way. Okay, so the code for doing this is fairly simple, actually. So let's go to our main activity. And all of this code can really happen inside the on-click listener for our save button. So let's see, we called our button, we called it save button. Okay. Bear with me for a second. Why is it not recognizing our save button? We've given it an ID of save button here. I think we're just missing an import. Okay, that's good. Let me check. I'm just missing something in my import. Right, thank you. I need this import. I think I'm missing a dependency in my build.gradle. That's interesting. Why? Whoops. Thanks. I'm just looking for which one of these is missing. I've got constraint layout. I've got app compat. I've got Kotlin. Let's just see. Why am I missing this? Just going to check my references here. Very strange. I've got my app compat activity. Okay, let me take this out for a minute. I'll save my file, I'll build my app. I'll look in my designer. Got an ID of save button, which is correct. I'll let Gradle run for a minute. Okay, well, I'll figure out what reference I'm missing. So here's what we want to do. We want to validate the inputs. So first we're going to check. We use the text utility class. If our text box is not empty, and we also want to make sure that our spinner is the user's picked option 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So our rating spinner, we want to check the selected item position is the property. We want to make sure this is greater than 0. So if the user has typed a name and they've picked something in the spinner, in this case, we'll capture the inputs into variables. Actually, we can make this even shorter. Let's into an instance of our restaurant class. So we'll call our constructor. We don't need to call new in Kotlin. And we'll set out the name and the rating property. So our name is going to be equal to and we'll trim any trailing or leading spaces off of it. For our rating, we're going to get it from the spinner. So we'll access the selected item of the spinner. And then we need to convert that value first to a string and then to an integer, because rating is an int property. So this is going to populate 2 of the 3 properties in our restaurant object. So now we want to connect and save to Firebase. So I'll create a database instance. So we want to use Firebase Firestore. .get instance, and we're going to set a collection out as restaurants. And Firebase works like other NoSQL databases. Doesn't matter this collection isn't here yet. If it's not there, it'll create it. Collection will be created if it doesn't exist already. So that now we'll set the ID. We'll use Firebase to generate a new ID. So our db.document, and we call getID. This will create a new document in Firebase. Sorry, that's a method. And it'll give us a new ID. And then basically, so we're creating a new empty document, but we're generating an ID. And then we do an update. So we call .set. Okay, in case it's null. So I'll have to figure out why my import isn't working. I'll put this code in the chat. Yeah, I guess we could call the getter. Oh, sorry, you're talking about on the previous line, Andrew. Right, so we could just call .id. We don't need to call the getter. Thank you. May as well accept the hint. So this code should save to Firebase. I'll put my event handler code in the chat. I'm going to have to fix whatever reference I'm missing here. I think it's the Kotlin. Synthetic. Thank you. See, up there it is a little easier to read on Pastebin. Oh, next. So I'll have to figure out what's wrong with my import. That it's not recognizing the views on my form. So somewhere I've got a dependency that I'm missing in my project, but I'm not sure why. Okay, so try your code. If it's working, try your form. Mine isn't running yet. And then once you save, you should be able to go back to the console. If you click on real-time database, sorry, if you click on Cloud Firestore, your data will show here. Okay. That's odd because we haven't had this issue before. We've been able to add elements, and that Kotlin synthetic reference has just been here for us. Okay. It's interesting though, Mark, because I did this yesterday. I did the update, and here was my version from yesterday, and it works just fine. And I've copied out of here. We've got Android X. Good question. We've got I added a few other imports in my version from yesterday, but those are for doing other things. Let's see, I'll just copy them. Always worth a try, good suggestion. We'll take a break in a minute. So the intent we're not using yet, but we will. App compat and bundle we have, text utils. Toast, again, we're not using yet. So these are all the imports. Sure, Andrew, if you don't mind posting the link to the repo. I'm thinking there's something in the build.gradle file because Kotlin X has been here in the past, but it's not being recognized in this project. And Kotlin X, that's what allows us programmatically to access the views in the UI, in the XML layout. So it's not recognizing Kotlin X, and therefore we can't read the views on the form. I think it's something in my build.gradle. Maybe I will check these plugins. In my sample project, one thing I have in my sample, I have this Kotlin Android extensions, which I don't have here. I wonder, I'm going to try that. And then sync. Yeah, you're right, Tim. There was a Gradle update. Reload dependencies and sync my project. Thanks, Andrew. I'll have a look at that as well. I'm not sure what it's doing. Okay, my Gradle sync failed. So I'm going to comment out my code first here. A bit of a pain, but useful strategy. I'm going to stop my Gradle build process and try again. I'm also going to check what Andrew's got. So we're going to have a look at the build.gradle. So we've got the Kotlin Gradle plugin here. And you do have the Kotlin Android extension here, which my project was missing. Now my project just seems to be stuck. Oh. So this should be apply plugin. Whoops. I'm going to undo that and sync. I'm going to check my other build.gradle file, my project level. So in Andrew's build.gradle, you've got apply plugin. Yet in my version, it's got ID, which is very strange. Yeah, mine says ID, not apply plugin. I'm going to try a Gradle sync. Okay, it didn't fail. So I'm curious if I go back to my main activity, if I can import this yet. That seems to have fixed the problem. I know it is weird, it's not the same syntax. So if I uncomment, I will show you what change I made, and I realize we're due for a break as well. Just bear with me for a minute. Whoops. Yeah, so I had to make that change. So in my version of build.gradle, the module app, I had to add the Kotlin Android extension. So I put this in my build.gradle module app, and then once you change this file, Android Studio prompts you to sync the Gradle changes. Once I sync those changes, then it recognizes my Kotlin X and it recognizes all the objects in the XML layout. I'm going to try it now and we'll see if I can actually save anything to the database. So I'll run the app. Kind of strange that reference was missing in the other projects we've created here automatically. So I'll run my app again. I'll also open up Firestore. So now I'll add something. And I'll try to save. Now we should have probably added a toast message or something. Yes, it's great. But I'll just refresh. See if my data is here. So it built the restaurants collection. Here's our ID, and now I've got one restaurant in my database. I'll add one more. Set my spinner to a different rating. And you can see the Firebase console now updates automatically. As soon as I add it in my app, so our ad is working. So we should include a toast message here, as well as a toast message if the user clicks save but doesn't enter anything. But we're about due for a break. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop the recording. I will create a new Git repository and push the code up to GitHub for now. But please keep in mind, this project is using my Google services.json, so it's going to connect to my database. So if you use the project, please replace my Google services JSON with your own. Okay, I will push this up to GitHub and we'll be back in 10 minutes.